guys, welcome back. So this is Limbo Lupus. My name is Lauren. And recently I was diagnosed with UCTD, and that is considered an autoimmune disease. It's called Undifferentiated Connective Tissue Disease. I did make a video prior to this called What Not to Say to a Chronically Ill Person. Basically, some of my pet peeves. So this video is going to kind of list down, I've written a 2-page list, and when I'm serious when I mean 2 full pages of symptoms since I was about 5 years old. So I hope that this is helpful to those that are searching for answers, because it was really helpful for me when I was searching for answers to hear tons and tons of different videos of people's symptoms. And that's really the purpose of this video, is so that someone like me who's searching for answers, that needs to go back to their doctor to advocate for themselves, can do so because they heard someone else and their symptoms, and maybe they can identify and pull some of those symptoms and say, oh, that actually was a symptom that I experienced, or oh, I didn't realize that that could be connected to an autoimmune disease. And then in turn, that could actually help you to get the answers, to get the lab work, to get the doctors to listen to you a little bit more, or at least it just validates what you're experiencing so you don't feel alone. So that's really the purpose of this video. So maybe 4 or 5. I started to show signs of extreme fatigue, where it was really hard to get me out of bed, to go, to get dressed myself, to brush my hair, to get excited in the morning. Sometimes she would have to literally just throw clothes on me. No hair was brushed. I looked like a hot mess, and I was going to kindergarten. And she would just take me to school because she couldn't be late for work. So I wouldn't come out of bed. She would have to literally pull me out of bed and get me dressed herself. So that was the first sign. And one of the things my mom brought to the attention to the doctors was that I was always fatigued. And their answer was, give her sugar. Sugar? Really? You're going to tell somebody that has a fatigued child to give them sugar? Yeah, that's our medical system, guys. There's a lot of doctors out there that will dismiss you and tell you some bullshit. So you really have to know what's going on. You really have to keep a log. Like if you notice certain things about your children, really keep a log about them. Don't just sort of dismiss them because the doctors do, because trust me, my son is 4 years old and he's had 4 surgeries in 4 years because I'm the one that was advocating for my child because I knew something wasn't right with him. And over the years, I was right every single time. So my point is, sometimes we have to know more than we would hope to. We have to know more about our blood work. We have to know more about symptoms. We have to know more about keeping track of those symptoms, because then over time we can prove to these doctors, we can go from different doctor to different doctor if we have to. We could see 10 doctors, and hopefully one of those doctors will actually listen because you have a record of everything. So keeping record is really important, and they don't really teach people that. So I think I really feel like in high school, there should be some sort of one-on-one basic information about blood work, about just basic medical stuff that people should know so that they can advocate more properly for themselves and they know a little bit more, instead of just being ignorant and stupid and just listening to just the one doctor that you saw without getting a second, third, fourth opinion. So after about 5 years old, I started having stomach issues. Eventually from about the age of like 6 or 7 all the way to the age of 12, they finally diagnosed me with irritable bowel syndrome. When I say I was sick, I'm talking I was losing weight. I could hardly eat. When I did eat, it would go straight through me. I would miss sometimes 5 days of half of school. Like my mom would have to pick me up, or she would have to designate someone to come pick me up. It was so bad that people and teachers thought that I was lying. They thought that I was lying and making it up, that I was just trying to miss class, that I just had anxiety, when really I was suffering. I had such horrible cramping, stomach cramping, horrible pain. Everything I ate made me sick. I was losing weight. My mom sent me to camp for like a month during the summertime, like an away camp where you stay there for 4 weeks. And I came back and I was skinnier than when she left me and sent me off there. I could only eat peanut butter and jelly sometimes. Literally, when I say everything that I ate made me sick, imagine being 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Imagine being all of those ages, going through the puberty and everything that you're going through and the changes, and then constantly being afraid to eat anything. And when I say, I'm going to try to find a picture of me, I was frail looking. I was so thin, it was unbelievable. So I lost a lot of weight, and I was constantly going up and down, up and down, up and down. Oh, excuse me. Okay. I also had chronic strep as a child. I mean, when I say chronic strep, I'm the queen of strep throat as a child. I probably had it like 8 or 9 times as a young child. Just as a young child. And then over the years, I kind of grew out of it, but I was chronically sick. I would constantly get sick. I would constantly get ear infections. I ended up getting diagnosed with asthma when I was 5 years old. So that's already a sign of inflammation in the body when you're talking about asthma. When you're also talking about chronic ear infections, chronic congestion, all of that is a sign of inflammation. Something is irritating the body. I have an allergy to dust mites, but that wasn't diagnosed until much later in life. I don't really have too many seasonal allergies outside of just dust mites and cats. So it's kind of hard to determine when I was young why I was getting sick all the time. But I personally believe at this point that it was a sign and symptom of potential autoimmunity, because I did find out later in life that my sister, that I did not grow up with, she was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. Also, I did not know that all of these years my mom had psoriasis, which I was aware of, but I didn't know as a child or as a youth that psoriasis is an autoimmune disease. So these are things that I've witnessed, but wasn't really, like, I didn't put 2 and 2 together. I was too young too. I also had something, if I can find pictures, my cheeks were always flushed. I wear makeup because I like to make my skin tone look even. Most women like to do that. In my case, the reason why I prefer to wear makeup instead of not and never having like a clean face is because my cheeks are always super red. They look super flushed all the time. And I could never understand why I had to have flushed cheeks constantly, like rosy cheeks all the time. Since I was like about 3 months old, 6 months old, I have pictures. My face is flushed, just completely rosy all over. At that age, people are like, oh, that's normal. As I've gotten older, I've noticed that I get what's called hot spot rashes, where suddenly my face will get super red, super irritated. I'll put a picture here. Super red, super irritated. It will sometimes start off as I'll feel like a tingling sensation, and then I'll feel the heat. Like someone turned up the heat and turned up the stove, and my face starts getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And then eventually when it reaches a peak, I start to see redness. Like the redness actually starts to form. My cheeks get even redder and hotter in the area that it's being affected. And then it will start to itch. And when it starts to itch, I have to go get cortisone and put it on, at least topically, to reduce me itching it and making it more irritated. These hot spot rashes, they can go from my wrists, my arms, all over my arms, my chest, my neck, my face, pretty much everywhere. I haven't really noticed them too much on my legs, but I do notice sometimes that I can see them on my ankles or close to my ankles. So mainly more like on my hands, my joints, kind of like the upper body. So I've really noticed the face redness, the flushing. A lot of people with lupus tend to have redness in their face. They'll have that typical butterfly rash. I've never had the traditional butterfly rash, but I've definitely had this consistent rash on my face since I was a little kid, and also these hot spot rashes all over. When I was about 15 or 16, I was in school and I went to pull my hair back in a ponytail, and I wasn't doing anything extenuous, and I wasn't overexerting myself or my muscles, and I pulled my hair back and my neck got snapped to one side and the muscle just completely pulled, and for about 2 weeks I had to stay home from school, and I wasn't able to come to school because I couldn't move my neck. I couldn't literally move, and it was so painful. I had to go on muscle relaxers, and that's when I started to notice the muscle spasms and things of that nature. I always sort of made an excuse for myself that, oh, I was just athletic my whole life. I was a figure skater for 14 years. Towards the end, it was more on and off. I was a dancer in school. I was more active. I was an athlete. So I just assumed that it was my body I slowed down. I was slowing down in my athleticism and being really super active. So I thought, oh, maybe I pulled a muscle when I was younger and, and now it's catching up to me, those types of things. So I never really thought that the muscle spasms or the pain would have been related to an autoimmune disease. I do remember, to backtrack a little, when I was 8 years old and I was lacing up my boots and I was ready to get on the ice, because I had a session with my coach. And all of a sudden it felt like my knee had popped out of the socket. I literally thought that I was going to die. I was freaking out inside. I was like crying inside. I didn't want people around me to know how much pain I was in, but I literally thought I dislocated my knee just because I was sitting there. So when I look back at that moment, it is a reminder that I probably was showing signs of my autoimmune disease, because I do have hyperextension in my joints in certain parts of my body, which now when I think about it, that would be related to this undifferentiated connective tissue disease. And some autoimmune diseases have that hyperextension where it can cause dislocation. I think there's one called EDS. I don't believe that's what I have, but again, mine's undifferentiated, so I don't really know I'm not in a specific category yet of autoimmunity, but I am considered an autoimmune disease. Also, when I was 12 years old, 12 years old, and I got my period for the first time, I noticed that it was extremely painful. And I knew that my mother had endometriosis and suffered from extreme abdominal pain her whole entire youth. And going through puberty was extremely hard on my mom because of endometriosis. I didn't realize that I too would have endometriosis, which I did. So I suffered for a really long time with chronic back pain and pelvic pain. They always assumed that my back pain was related to the endometriosis, but now I'm actually realizing it was not related just to endometriosis. But I had endometriosis for a really long time that went undiagnosed. I had to struggle and push doctors to finally diagnose me. I was able, after I had my son almost 5 years ago, I was able to convince a doctor to give me a hysterectomy because I was suffering so poorly with the disease. I also got diagnosed with adenomyosis at the same time when they did the surgery. I was also diagnosed with interstitial cystitis as well. All of these 3 conditions that I was diagnosed with cause extreme pain. So much so that they are on, and it's really hard to get on this list, but for the state of Illinois, it's a really hard list to get onto. But it's considered a chronic pain condition, all 3 of them, that cause so much extreme pain that they're on the medical marijuana list. So the fact that those 3 conditions are on that list, and I have all 3, and I suffered since I was about 11 or 12 years old, it speaks volumes as to the fact that I've been able to sustain staying sane and not cracking and still being able to work, still being able to go to school and do the things that I have been. But that contributed heavily to me living at home a lot longer than maybe the average person would have with my family because of that. And those 3 are also related to chronic inflammation in the body, which again, autoimmunity creates a chronic inflammation in the body. So if you read a lot of studies, endometriosis, adenomyosis, and interstitial cystitis have a link together, not only together, but they also have links to many different autoimmune diseases. So a lot of people that have an autoimmune disease have those conditions, or later get diagnosed with those conditions, or diagnosed prior, including irritable bowel syndrome, or IBD, which is also irritable bowel disease. It's an inflammatory condition of the bowel. So all of these things are inflammation in the body. And I've had all of them. I was also diagnosed with costochondritis. It can come and go. It's not considered something that stays, but it's where the rib cage, the tendons, the muscles in the rib cage are inflamed in the chest wall. So when you breathe in and out, you could feel popping, you could feel sharp pain, and that's due to inflammation in the body. So it's very odd to me that I've had all these different conditions, I've had all these different problems, and not a single doctor, not ever one time said, have you ever checked for an autoimmune disease? No one ever thought to check with all of these weird conditions that are linked to inflammation. It's like, well, where's this inflammation coming from? So that's a little frustrating, but I was diagnosed with costochondritis. I also had TMJ. So that's where the joint in the jaw, I'll just say the jaw joint, sometimes it can get dislocated. It causes popping, locking. I recently, before, like in September and November, I had a TMJ episode where I had lockjaw. Like my jaw was almost completely like closed, and I could only speak a little bit through my mouth, and I had to be careful of what I ate. You're not supposed to chew gum. You're not supposed to chew anything hard. You're not supposed to chew anything that's like you have to chew to consume, like steak or like chicken. Sometimes you have to stick to like smoothies and things that are really, really soft to the jaw if you have to chew. And that's something I always thought, oh, did I get injured? I did have my molars removed. I had my wisdom teeth removed when I was in high school. Was it because of that? Like, did they do something to my jaw? Did they fuck me up? No, I actually think it has everything to do with what caused the muscle spasms in my neck that were on and off, what caused the tension in my shoulders, the pain, the impinged tendons in my shoulders causing some numbness, the jaw pain. All of that I feel like is connected, and it all started in the top portion of my body. So my neck, my jaw, my head, my shoulders, it all kind of started there, outside of the chronic back pain that I always had. Let's see. I also had chronic migraines. I started getting those about 17 or 18 years old. And I also got flashing lights with them. So I had migraine with aura. I was on migraine medication, but it made my heart race. It really didn't feel comfortable or really good. And nothing really ever worked outside of a little bit of Advil. It would take the edge off. And when I say Advil, with endometriosis, interstitial cystitis, costochondritis, IBS, neck spasms, like all of these pain issues, I took Advil for them because it was the only thing that actually took the edge off. It never took away the pain fully, but it would make me comfortable enough where I could like get through the day, or that I could just go to sleep. Sometimes, because my pain was so bad, I would have to take 35 Advil in a day. And there was one time when the nurse said, you need to go to the emergency room if you're taking that much a day. And I did, but it's like, what are you going to do? They're just going to give you narcotics, which literally over time I've been so sick that I'm so allergic to almost every narcotic you can possibly imagine that when I have to have surgery, I have to go see the anesthesiologist 2 weeks prior to my surgery just to sit down and talk to the doctor to find out what medication they're going to be able to give me for surgery. So imagine that. You've been through every medication you could possibly... Literally my allergy list, they have to put that big wristband in the hospital that says allergies. My allergy list is like a freaking page long because that's how many medications I've tried. I've tried everything. I've even tried things that worked, that got rid of my pain without making me feel drowsy or loopy or high. And then all of a sudden, a year later, I become allergic to it. Like my body rejects the medication. So I'm a super sensitive person, which Again, people with autoimmune diseases can be extremely hypersensitive, and that's who I am, and I'm surprised that no one ever pointed any of this stuff out. Sensitivity to light. So I've started becoming more sensitive to light within the last 10, 15 years, especially if I go out at night. And you know how the street lights are super bright? Like my eyes can't take it anymore, even with my glasses on. It's even worse with my contacts in. My eyes, I have a really, really hard time seeing the road. I have a hard time, my eyes feel blurred because my eyes are absorbing the light and it's so intense. Sometimes I wish I could wear sunglasses at nighttime, and that sounds so ridiculous, but it helps my eyes. It's the only thing is it's even darker, so you can't see. So I've noticed that over the years, my eyes have been more sensitive. I also have noticed with that sensitivity has come floaters. Like I'm looking right now at the camera, but there's a white curtain that I have in my kitchen. And as I'm looking at it, I can see all the floaters, and they're constantly there. Constantly. I'm constantly seeing floaters in my eyes. So it's not like a clear view picture of just the world around me. I'm always haunted by these damn freaking floaters in my eyes. And who would have known, but people with autoimmune diseases tend to have floaters in their eyes, and chronic floaters, chronic eye inflammation, chronic things like that. Let's see. I've gotten random rashes, or I would like brush up against something, or someone give me a hug. They'll touch my face or my arm, or just out of the blue, my body will, even my hair, like I could move my hair like this. And let's say I put it near my face, and all of a sudden my face will start to itch, or my neck. I'll get them on my thighs. I'll get hives. I also was diagnosed in high school with cold urticaria. That's basically saying that you're allergic to the cold. I'm always cold as it is. That's another thing. I'm very sensitive to temperature. So I get really overheated easily, especially when I'm outside, and it makes me fatigued. But I also get hives when I get cold. I also have respiratory issues when I get really cold. I'll have more trouble breathing, especially due to the fact that I already have asthma, and then I already have inflammation in my chest wall from my autoimmune disease. So when I get cold, I can have issues breathing. So with cold urticaria, it's basically saying that unfortunately you probably need like I should probably have an EpiPen. I don't have one right now, but if I get too cold, like I can't even go swimming in really, really cold water. Like to go to a lake and just jump in the water, I can't do that. I can't do those random things because I have an issue with cold, with temperature. So that's something. And I would break out in hives, like especially on my thighs if I was outside for long periods of time. Even if I'm bundled up to a certain extent, it might take longer. But once the cold really gets to my skin, it's done. I'll have like a rash, and if I'm super cold, and hives, I'll break out and I'm itchy. Chronic congestion, I mentioned that. Let's see. I'm just trying to look at the list here. Let's bring it over. The lower back pain. I started having lower back pain long ago with my endometriosis and adenomyosis. Also, I get lower back pain with my interstitial cystitis, but I started noticing that I was having more and more back pain in general. Like my spine hurt, my back hurt. It would hurt by my flank area, so where the kidneys are, which is very concerning. That's not something that you want to happen to you, especially if you have an autoimmune disease, because if your autoimmune system attacks certain areas in your body, that's not good. It could attack your heart, your kidneys. Right now, it's attacking my thyroid. That's why my TPO level is so out of this world high, unbelievable. So I do get the lower back pain, which would be more linked, in my opinion, to what's called inflammatory back pain. That's sort of associated with AS, that's ankylosing spondylarthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, non-radiographic spondylarthritis. Those are all things that if you're curious about your back pain, your hip pain, I also get hip pain. My spine pops. Like you can tell that I'm inflamed in my spine because I can get up out of a chair and you could hear my spine pop. You can hear my hip pop. I'll roll in bed and you can hear it pop. Sometimes it gets frozen or stuck and I'll have to like work it to pop it myself, or else it's like this achy feeling that it just really hurts. Let's see. I always have knee pain with, again, in the past, I call it locking. Like I'll suddenly be sitting down, laying down, and I go to get up and my knee will lock on me. And it's so painful until it kind of unlocks itself. I also get Achilles tendon pain. So my Achilles tendon will suddenly just go wonky and I'll be limping around the house and it hurts so bad to put pressure on my feet at all. Like I don't even want to do it because it hurts so bad. I also get, especially in the morning time, or if I'm laying down and I'm having a flare, the bottoms of my feet will get super irritated and inflamed. And that's called plantar fasciitis. And so for me, the only way to prevent the severeness of the pain from occurring is having like those soft slippers that you wear. They have like the wool inside. They're structured on the outside. They have a hard rubber sole, but they're super soft inside. I have to wear those around the house, especially when I'm walking around on wood floors, because I have wood floors in my house, or a brick floor. I have a brick floor in my kitchen. So anything super hard. If it's not carpet, I'm not supposed to be walking around barefoot, basically. So I don't know, that could be a symptom that you might be experiencing. Yes, all of these symptoms you could technically have all on their own, but if you're having multiple of them, it's good to question what's really going on in your body, because I always thought they were separate until I started to realize there's autoimmunity and autoimmune diseases in my family, like my mother and my sister, and that's kind of when I was like, that's interesting. And then I started researching and listening to people's symptoms, and it gets a little overwhelming at first, but honestly, when you listen to a million people on YouTube and you listen to different stories from people from all over the world, you actually can identify. And I think that's really what got me to this point where I actually finally got a diagnosis from a proper doctor that was actually caring for me and listening to me. One of the most concerning symptoms I have is numbness and tingling. So I'll get it in my face. Back in November, December, and January, I started having tingling in my face, the side of, in my head, my scalp. It was like the weirdest sensation. Just like imagine your foot falling asleep or your leg falling asleep. Imagine that with a tingling sensation, like that pins and needles feeling in your head and your face. That's what I was getting. And then my face would go numb. And then my scalp would go numb. I would get that in my hands, my wrists. I would even get spots of numbness. I had spots of numbness on my stomach. Like one big spot, I had to go to the emergency room because I was like, what the fuck is going on? I had a huge spot on my stomach. I've had like numbness again in my hands and feet. A lot of the times when you're laying down, if you're laying on one side for a long period of time or you're sitting on your leg, that will go numb because the blood supply is cut off or reduced. In my case, I could be laying on my left side and my right side will go numb. I could be laying on my right side and my left side will go numb. That's crazy. Sometimes I'll wake up, like I woke up a couple nights ago, with both sides of my body numb, from my shoulders on down to my elbows. Numb, just numb. And it was so bothersome that I couldn't go back to sleep. And then I woke up the next day and it had reduced, but it didn't fully go away until I got up and like started moving around a little bit more. Also, another symptom I've had probably since high school, and I never really told anybody because I thought it was normal, which is really weird to think this is a normal symptom to have or just part of life. But I would wake up, I would like lay in the wrong position. Let's say I had my arm over my head, especially when you have your arm over your head and you're like laying flat on your stomach. I can't lay on my stomach anymore. I can't lay with my arms over my head at all because if I wake up, my arm is stuck, completely stuck. The joint completely frozen. Like there's no ability to move it without wanting to cry. It hurts so bad. It's like, imagine the worst, rustiest, creaky, like bolt that's bolted inside that you have to undo to redo the house or whatever, and you're working that shit for hours. It hurts that bad. It's like rusty. You have to grease it, oil it. Even imagine a car. You're working on a car and there's a bolt or a nut that won't come off because it's so like thickly encrusted with rust and shit and gunk, and it just won't. That's how it feels. It literally feels like I'll be frozen and stuck there forever. Like I'll never be able to get out of that position. And then when you move, you have to like breathe in deeply and just, sometimes I've had to scream my way through pulling my arm down, just scream in pain because it hurts that bad. I can't even explain it. It's probably one of the most devastating times is when I get frozen. And I call it frozen because it's just what happens. So I have to be careful of how I sleep. I tend to sleep on my side or just flat on my back with my knees up. Because if I lay flat on my back without my knees up, my back is going to kill me. And it starts hurting like instantly. I can't even lay flat without my legs elevated or up. So the numbness and tingling, at one point I actually thought I might have had MS because of the numbness and tingling. And what was even weird, the scariest part, was that my tongue got numb on one side. The roof of my mouth and my tongue on my right side of my face, completely numb. And I thought to myself, what the hell is going on? Do I have MS? Like, is something wrong with my brain? They did an MRI. They didn't find any lesions. They didn't find anything. That's another autoimmune disease is MS. And other autoimmune diseases like lupus, the disease I have, UCTD, undifferentiated connective tissue disease, because it's your autoimmune system do whatever the fuck it wants. It could suddenly become lupus. It could suddenly become ankylosing spondyloarthritis. It could suddenly become whatever the hell it decides to do. It depends on how it attacks, and what part of the body it attacks. So it could suddenly decide, honestly, I know it sounds a little crazy, but I am in the belief that because of UCTD, it can affect the brain. Your autoimmune system can in other ways attack your central nervous system so that you do have cognitive issues and, slowing down and things like that. I have horrible muscle weakness in December around the time of Christmas. I could hardly walk for like 2 weeks, and I slowly gained my strength. It was so painful to walk. Sometimes it would take me 20 minutes just to get into the building at work. So I'd have to leave the house early to get to work just to walk in. I'd have to sit in a chair with a pillow, and getting up and down, I had to hold on to my cubicle to get up, to sit down. I'd have to hold on to something. To walk in the hallway, to go get the papers, I'd have to hold on to the wall. I'd have to walk like inch by inch, like tiny little steps. It was really, really bad. I get swelling and tingling in my hands and my joints every morning. My hands, I can feel it. They're swollen. They're not they might be slightly visibly swollen, but not as extreme as you can see online. There's pictures of people with swollen fingers and hands. But I can feel it every single day. I can feel it, and it's tight. The skin feels tight. Your hands feel tight and stiff. Everything is really stiff. All of my joints are stiff every morning. It's like I have to move to get going for my body to actually feel better. I have to physically move, which is a sign of inflammatory arthritis, basically. Arthritis of the body that is due to inflammation, not due to overall aging, right? And sometimes it's so hard, I can hardly, I have hand weakness and muscle weakness where it's really hard for me to open a jar of peanut butter, a jar of jelly. Sometimes it hurts to open the door of the fridge or to turn the knob for the bathroom, to turn the water on, to put my son into the shower. Like, it's weakness, it's pain, it's stiffness, it's soreness. It's just constantly being sore and not having the strength even to do some of those things all the time. And I have to really push myself. I just push myself every single day, because if I don't, if you stop okay, what's the term? I'm losing my train of thought here. If you don't use it, you lose it. That's like the term that people say. If you don't use it, you lose it. So I'm not willing at this point to completely lose my ability to do things because I'm not using my hands properly, or I'm not doing so. I try, but half of the time I have to ask someone to open up like a can of peanut butter for me, or a jar of jelly. Can you tell my son likes peanut butter and jelly a lot? Yeah. I've also had what's called, it's a type of rash. It's called a mottled rash, M-O-T-T-L-E-D. Look it up, mottled rash. It is, I'll put a picture here. It's due to when you have poor circulation. I had a lupus anticoagulant lab done and it came back positive. So that means that I potentially have an issue with clotting. So I could get blood clots. That's very significant because that's very, they find that a lot in people that have lupus. For example, Nick Cannon. If you watch some of his videos, he talks about how he has blood clots in his lungs. He could have a pulmonary embolism. He has them in his brain. They're surprised that he's still alive because of the clotting in his body. The only way that he's alive today is because of the medication, the blood thinners that keep him alive, that keep the clots from completely clogging up those areas and causing complete embolism and aneurysm and just completely killing him. So that's a possibility for me, unfortunately, because that came back positive, that lab. Lupus anticoagulant came back positive. So for me, the mottled rash is just a sign that I potentially do have issues with circulation, circulatory issues, which can affect the heart. And I'll put that rash up there so you can see it. As we go through it, before, I'll be putting little pictures up to the side. I mentioned the swollen fingers and joints, just all over muscle pain, like in shoulders, like arms. It sometimes feels like you've been running in sand for 10 hours. You've been working out. Like you're one of those buff, fitness experts, and you're running in the sand for 1,000,000 hours a day, and then you go home and you're super sore the next day. Imagine not working out for 5 years and then going to work out, and then you go too hard, and then you're at home for like a week because your whole body hurts and you're super sore. That's what it feels like. But imagine waking up like that, and you could feel that like that for weeks. You could feel like that for days. It could just suddenly randomly hit you in the middle of the day, or you could just again wake up like that with the chronic soreness all over. And that accompanies with stiffness as well. Let's see, so insomnia is a really big thing, especially when I have the chronic back pain. Just like ankylosing spondyloarthritis, I'll have back pain where I'm laying flat or I'm laying in bed and I literally cannot go to sleep because the pain is so unbearable. Like it's just aching and sore and stabbing and like I want to scream and you can't sleep. And I could be up and then I'll go to sleep for 2 hours because finally my body just can't handle being awake anymore. I'll fall asleep from being so overly exhausted, and then I'll wake up feeling like I have a hangover times 10. Imagine your worst hangover you've ever had in your entire life. You never wanted to drink again. It was so horrible. You felt so sick. That is what autoimmunity feels like. It's the worst feeling in the world. And I'll wake up like that. No sleep for 2 hours, and you wake up feeling like you have a hangover. It's the worst thing I've ever experienced. I've had a lot of really bad experiences with chronic pain. I've literally been in chronic pain since I was probably like 6 or 7. So you can only imagine how exhausting it is to be in chronic pain your whole entire life. And then one thing after another, you're experiencing all these crazy symptoms. So insomnia is really horrible. Also, I've noticed that when I eat things with nightshade, so that would be potatoes, tomatoes, eggplants, bell peppers, chili peppers, specifically chili peppers, anything that's spicy, I love spicy food. When I was pregnant, I would eat like at Chipotle, like it was my, the end of the world. Like I would eat there like every day, every other day. And the bottle of green hot sauce, I would literally dump half of that entire bottle onto my meal because that's how much I love spicy food. I love spicy food. But literally within the last, I would say 3 years, I've noticed that I'm having more trouble eating spicy food. I have to clear my throat a lot more. I also notice I get a headache, a migraine. I recently had an issue where I haven't eaten spicy food in a really long time, and all of a sudden I got the worst migraine after eating Chipotle with this like Chipotle dressing on the salad. It was horrible. I wanted to die. And then my whole body got weak. My whole body got sore. It was the worst feeling. It was like I put myself into a flare up with my autoimmune disease all because I ate something spicy. So I would watch what you eat as well. Like those are key things as well to look out for. Certain foods that you might eat, look up if you have a certain type of response to those foods. Is it just an allergy or is your body responding to that because you have an autoimmune disease? That could also indicate that you do have one. Brain fog, I was talking about cognitive issues and how the autoimmune disease affects your brain. I've noticed probably within the last 7 years that my cognitive abilities have declined. I am one of the fastest people. I've had compliments. I get hired on jobs because I'm super fast, super efficient, very organized. I'm OCD. I'm a Virgo and I'm also OCD. I'm super OCD. Like I love to be organized a specific way. I like things to be a certain way. I'm not actually OCD. I've never been diagnosed with it, but I just use that term. I'm super organized and I like to do things efficiently and timely, and I like to do things a specific way. And people appreciate that about me, especially when they've hired me. I like to work fast and get the job done. But I've noticed that within the last couple of years, I've started to slow down. Like my pain levels have gone up and it's harder to focus. It's also hard when you feel like you're in a fog. That's something that I've noticed is like being hazy and foggy all the time. When they told me I had fibromyalgia 7 years ago, they were like, oh, brain fog, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if I totally believe that. I'm almost convinced that fibromyalgia is just like an autoimmune disease, like UCTD, especially if you have the blood work and you don't show, like the blood work doesn't come back positive for an autoimmune disease. I still think that there's something behind fibromyalgia affecting the brain a certain way due to autoimmunity. I don't know. That's just me, but you can lose your train of thought, your inability to focus, you feel spacey. I associate that with my autoimmune disease. I had thyroid nodules on my thyroid. I had 3 of them. So they've been monitoring them every single year, doing ultrasounds on them once a year to make sure that I don't get cancer. Because that's something that's also unique about me is that I have a gene called ATM. It's a gene mutation. And so that basically means I'm missing the ATM gene in my genome and in my DNA. That predisposes me to a high risk of cancer, especially because of my family history. We probably have like every cancer you could possibly imagine, from leukemia to breast cancer, pancreatic cancer, colon cancer, rectal cancer. I'm trying to think of what other cancers. Uterine, ovarian cancer. I mean, literally, I could just name them all. But because of that, they have to monitor my thyroid nodules. But I've also found out that people with autoimmune diseases, especially with like Graves and Hashimoto's, they can have, which are 2 autoimmune diseases that affect the thyroid, they can have nodules on their thyroid and they're more susceptible to having thyroid cancer. So that's something I have to worry about or watch. Also due to the fact that my autoimmune disease is now attacking my thyroid. My thyroid levels are normal, but my TPO levels for the antibodies in my system are showing that my autoimmune system is attacking my thyroid. So that's something to watch out. I also had, since I was a little kid, an enlarged thyroid. I don't know why. They could never tell me why. my thyroid was always enlarged, and they could visibly see it, and doctors would always touch it and point at it and wonder why it was like enlarged in that area, but they could never tell my mother why, until I finally got nodules and they started doing testing and, you know, checking to make sure that I don't have cancer. So that could have also indicated I potentially had symptoms of an autoimmune disease due to an enlarged thyroid, and then later on having nodules. Skin hypersensitivity on my skin. I could, like, just like someone with fibromyalgia, you could touch me and poke me, and it could be just as light as this, and I will freaking jump out of the chair. If I bump into something, I can feel it for 10-15 minutes after. I mean, the lingering sensation of something touching me or poking me is unbelievable. It literally feels like it just happened, and it could have happened 10-15 minutes ago. It hurts so badly, and I could get bruised really easily. It's extremely painful. I can't, over the last 5 years, I've stopped being able to have massages at all. Like, I can't have anyone touch my back. My spine is so sensitive. You touch my spine at all, I will freaking jump out of the chair. When I was in the neurologist's office at Northwestern, she touched my back when I was in a lot of pain before they sent me to the rheumatologist, and I freaking leaped almost off of the table, and I bawled my eyes out, and she's apologizing and profusely and giving me tissues, but I literally jumped off the table because it was so painful, and I started crying because I couldn't believe that she touched my back. My skin burns. I get these weird burning sensations all over, like randomly my arm will start to burn, and the clothes that I'm wearing. So I prefer wearing super, super soft clothes, something super comfortable, like very comfortable, more athletic, I guess, more athletic clothing, because like leggings and things like that, because my skin can be so sensitive. Like any fabric that is irritable or irritating, just done. Anything super tight, I've noticed lately, anything tight around my waist, I prefer not to unless I have to go somewhere I have to look nicer, because it feels so constricting, and my skin, it just hurts. It's not comfortable. It's not fun. Let's see. Yeah, the pressure on my spine, like my lower back, the worst. My son could accidentally just bump me a little bit because they're playing on the bed or just anything, and I will freak out. Another thing which is consistent with lupus, even though I've been diagnosed with undifferentiated connective tissue disease, and this is kind of why I've been put in this category, because they can't really put me in the lupus category as of yet, or any other specific category as of yet. I've had them for a long time, but I'll get like mouth sores on the roof of my mouth, inside my cheeks, on my gum line. They are not related to like cold sores or canker sores or anything like that, because whenever I've been given medication, an assumption that it's not. So they're not sure what it is, but the only thing I can think of is that it is related to autoimmunity. In similar, lupus patients get those sores in their mouth. I'm not sure if people with ankylosing spondylarthritis or spondylitis get that. I think I've heard of people with AS getting that as well. I'm not sure, but I'm assuming that other autoimmune diseases have that similar, but I guess lupus specifically gets mouth sores. So that's one of the things that, drives them more. As my doctor mentioned, it sounds like lupus, but again, it could take years to get that type of diagnosis, because I have to check other boxes off, and I don't quite fit that category yet, even though I do have a lot of the symptoms. Hair loss and hair thinning. When I was younger, I had the thickest eyebrows you could possibly imagine. My hair is super long, like really long, like super long. But I always thought that because my hair was curly, that somehow my hair was just gonna come out. Like, my family's always said, oh, you shed a lot. Like, your hair's everywhere, Lauren. It's all over our clothes. It's all over everything. I even have to be careful about when I take a shower. I make sure I comb it with a wide tooth comb. I'll comb it with massage the conditioner through my hair with my fingers and just like really make sure that I get all that excess hair out so it doesn't go down the drain while I'm washing or conditioning it. And I have to throw it away. And I'm talking like a clump of hair. So I know that my hair has thinned out from definitely when I was younger, even a couple of years ago. My hair is definitely thinned out. It's not as thick as it used to be. I do have an undercut, so that doesn't really help my case because the back of my hair is like shaved. But the hair that I have, I do notice that it's thinning out, especially along the hairline. I feel like my hair has thinned out. Like you can, when I part it like this, you can see more of it. In the past, you couldn't because my hair is so curly and thick, and it's not that way anymore, which again is related to my autoimmune disease. The eyebrows, like I've noticed that due to my skin condition, it's forming up here in my eyebrow area. So the ends of my eyebrows actually have thinned out. If I were to wipe off my makeup, you would see the redness, the bumpiness, and you would also see that there's like hardly any hairs at the very ends because my hair has fallen out and it will no longer grow back. The same thing with my legs. It's really funny. I call it a, this is such a horrible joke, but like Apaches, like a patch, like a patches, like patches. It's so stupid. That was a stupid joke. But if let's say I don't shave my legs and I just let the hair grow and I'm being lazy, I'll notice the longer hair it's not fully consistent throughout. There's other areas where almost there's no hair on my legs. So it's like patches of areas where there's no hair. And it's weird because that again is wherever the skin condition that's on my face is in my eyebrows is also on, I found out from a dermatologist, on my whole body. So there's areas of my body that I don't grow hair anymore. It's really weird. I don't know how to explain it. I think that's also related to my autoimmune disease and is a part of the rashes that you get sometimes with autoimmune diseases, specifically to lupus. I think AS people also get that. I don't know what other diseases have, autoimmune diseases have that. I think like Hashimoto's and Graves', I think they do because it affects the hormones. So it can affect like hair growth and stuff. So that's a lot. That's a shit ton of information that I've given in an almost 1 hour video of literal symptoms. I have been through a lot. And then you want to throw in, just to end the story off, when I had my son, a couple years later, I had to have a double mastectomy with reconstruction. And my surgery was over 12 hours long. That was one of the surgeries where I had to go in and speak to the anesthesiologist. That was when I didn't know that I had an autoimmune disease. And it was extremely, extremely stressful having that. And then a couple years prior, or a year prior, I had a hysterectomy because of my endometriosis and adenomyosis. Oh, which is just hard being a woman, having reconstructed boobs and no uterus, not able to have my own children anymore. I have been through a lot that a lot of people my age at 34 years old couldn't even imagine, the type of stress and pain and trauma that I've been through since I was a little kid. Imagine being a little kid and being chronically ill and not knowing why, and then asking yourself, why does God hate me so much? What did I do wrong to deserve this? And no doctor listening to you and people just dismissing you. Sorry, that's my dishwasher. People dismissing you and not really taking you seriously and sort of putting you into a category of a chronic complainer. So I've been through a lot. I've had many surgeries. So I can understand and relate to your pain. Whoever's listening to this, know that you're not alone. Know that every single person has their individual experience. Every single person has their individual story. You have a story as well. You should probably share your story and let everybody know what your symptoms are. I hope that you can be an advocate for yourself and for others. because that is what my journey is pushing me to do. I really want to get more involved in the community for autoimmune diseases and people with chronic illness and disability, because it's extremely important for everyone to know that they have people in their corner and to support them. It's really hard when you feel alone. So if you want to comment below, if you want to tell me a little bit more about your story, if you just want to share your story, that's great. If any of the symptoms that I have can relate to you, then please take some of those and take that back to your doctor. Maybe that sparked, a light bulb moment for you where it actually resonated and you can finally realize, oh, that's not normal. Maybe I need to talk to somebody about that. Don't ever, ever, ever give up on yourself. It's really hard when you want to, and everyone else around you is telling you no and telling you you're wrong. It's really hard to not give up. You sort of feel defeated, but know that eventually the truth will come out and you will get the answers you need. And if one doctor doesn't listen, go to the next one. Don't waste your money. Don't waste your time continuing to try to convince people around you or the doctors in your circle that you deserve to be listened to. Find someone else, because someone else will listen to you. It could take 5 years, unfortunately. It could take 7. It could take 10 years. It could take 30 years, like it took for me. It took me 30 years to get a diagnosis. I am not a medical, I am a medical professional. I'm not a doctor. I do not have a doctorate. I'm not someone that is paid to give medical advice. I am not giving medical advice. I'm just giving you my experience and my story in hopes that it resonates with someone out there so that they don't feel alone, but they also have validation that will help them, give them strength to advocate more for themselves. So I hope you guys liked that. I hope you got something out of that. I hope you learned something. If you want to pass this along to your family, your friends, if somebody you know might have some of these symptoms, pass it to them. Maybe it will be helpful for them. That's really why I'm doing this, and I hope I can help someone out there. So I really, really appreciate it. Thank you for joining me today on Limbo Lupus, because we are in a state of limbo, especially when you don't really know what's going on. Your autoimmune disease could always change at any time. Your disease that's undiagnosed can always change at any time. And so we're sort of like in a limbic state where we don't know which direction life is going to take us, and we just do our best. So thank you for joining me today, and I will see you guys later. Bye-bye.